Hey, this is Jack Frew, and I had a couple ideas that might make recording for Reader Listen a little bit easier. So here's what I am trying, and I've only done this this is the first time I've done this, so we'll see how successful it is. When I do recording, I use this program called Twisted Wave. One of the things that I like about it is that it's got this VU meter on the side. It's also very quick for kind of editing and what have you. But one thing it does is it's got a marker feature. You see here I can add a marker. So watch what happens when I record. My name is Jack, and oops, I just said that wrong. I'll drop a marker by hitting the M key, and that marker is now in the file, so I know where to go back to. What I find is really helpful is that when you mess up, the combination of adding a marker along with some silence makes it really easy to come back and edit later. So let's just say that I'm saying something wrong. The quick brown duck jumped over. Wait a minute, that's not right. I'll leave a marker. There's some silence in there. You see the silence? And then I'll start again. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. That's better. So you can see here that when we come back to edit this later, we've got an identifier visually of where we have a problem. Now, if I were to go back and edit this right now, what I can do is I'll just play this, and I'll get to this point here, and I might just decide to cut that part out, right? However that's done. This is Twisted Wave, so I can just select that and hit delete, and it removes that whole section. That's how Twisted Wave works. Now, these markers are saved with the audio file. So if I do a save and save this as a WAV file, the markers come with it. So over here, let me just show you here, I've got in this program called Reaper, I've added this file, and I also have a couple of plugins configured, but they're not set up to go yet. Now, here I do a little intro. This marker that I put down really marks the start of the session, but here's a marker right here, and what this is right here, let me just play that for you. State of the code. If you could hear that, that's me breathing in. I breathe pretty loudly through my mouth right into the microphone. It's not something that you want to hear in your ears if you're listening on earbuds or what have you. So I like to get rid of that stuff. To do that, there's a couple ways. You could go and find all of these and mute them manually. That's fairly time consuming. I like to use this plugin called Deep Breath from Waves. And watch what happens when I go over this with Deep Breath turned on. View of the overall state of the code. We were to act. Did you notice that the breath was silent? And look at this little peak here and then this little thing here in that kind of white zone area. That was the Deep Breath plugin saying, hey, I detect a breathing sound. I'm going to go ahead and mute that out for you. So using Deep Breath across the whole thing can potentially automatically take all that stuff out. Now, sometimes it takes out too much. You have to watch for it. There are some controls here that you can use to kind of fiddle with it if it's taking out too much, but that's one thing that I do. And then the other thing I like to do is I have this other plugin called RVox. And what this does is on the left here, it's got this slider. So anything below wherever I set this gate is just going to be turned off. So if I stop, talking for like 10 seconds or something like that, this is going to get rid of the background noise in my house and, the sound of my kids downstairs and that kind of stuff, because they're all going to be quieter than this. This one over here is a compression setting. And what this is going to do is it's going to kind of make my quieter sounds a little bit louder, my loud sounds a little bit quieter. It just makes my voice more consistent. When I talk, I tend to get excited, and I can be really loud as well as be really soft. This just kind of levels all that stuff out. So usually, a setting of 5 or 6 or 8, whatever, it doesn't have to be exact, right? This setting over here doesn't have to be exact, but it does have to be, you see these waveforms here? Like, it has to be such that these waveforms are past the height of this thing, right? So these two in conjunction, quite frankly, if I put this one first instead of the deep breath, you might find that the low breaths, the breaths that aren't very loud, those might actually get cut out by this because they'd fall under this gate threshold. But there are some louder breathing sounds, so it's good to have the deep breath in there. So anyway, that's kind of the technique. Now, with the plugins both turned on, I'll just listen through this file and give a review of the overall state of the code. We were to act as an independent third party between a new studio who had inherited the code base and the client who was anticipating launching the product. Now I'm just going to pause this for a second here. You see that those two markers were probably on breaths, and we don't hear them anymore, so that's good. I don't have to do anything. Coming up here, I do know there's an area where I'll show where I screwed up. I made a mistake, and I've got the wrong thing in there. Also, notice that this here is this is a pretty big gap here, so that might need to be closed up. The studio had some concerns about the quality of the Now, I think I just said that twice, didn't I?
The client who was anticipating launching the product.
No, I didn't.
The studio had some concerns about the quality of the code they'd received and wanted an independent review prior to picking up development on the project. Here are a few thoughts on the process. I followed and several.
Okay, so now here you can see that I read this part. It actually sounds okay, but I must have lost my place or whatever, and I started over. So right here, this is about, you can see visually, this is about the last I really talk. I said the same thing here that I said here. This is actually a breathing sound that we didn't hear. So what we can do is in here, I'll just click here. Now in Reaper works a little differently. We generally, there's a lot of different ways to edit. So I'm just going to hit S to split. That's going to split the file into 2 segments. I'll hit play.
Here are a few thoughts on the process.
And watch what I'm going to do. While it's playing, I'm just going to hit S kind of on the fly to split the other side of this. So watch this. Oops. Do that.
On the project. Here are a few thoughts on the process.
So I just split that on the fly. I think I hit undo over here when I didn't mean to. So I'll split that. I've split that. Now up over here, Reaper has this little button that says ripple editing. Right now it's disabled. I'll go ahead and turn that on. I only have 1 track, so this gray with the 2 dots is the same right now as this gray with the 6 dots. If I had multiple tracks, this is going to pull them all together. But watch what happens now. I'll just hit the delete key. This is the highlighted piece. I hit delete. This piece on the right automatically kind of shortens, comes over to the left to take up. And let's click over here and we can listen to that edit now.
Development on the project. Here are a few thoughts on the process I followed and several takeaways I had from the experience.
So you see there what I did is a couple of things. We had a marker that identified an area that might need some work. That's a helpful thing when I'm editing this to be able to kind of look at it as well as listen to it. And then I just kind of cut in a couple places to make it sound good and got rid of the extra one. And you can see that was really easy because I re-recorded that whole segment. I don't ever try to re-record in the middle of a sentence, right? I just had to cut off the old stuff, bring the new stuff kind of in line, and away you go. So I'll show you here. We've got another one over here. This is a lot of silence. Let's just see what that's like.
I estimate that the coverage to represent...
Now that's me messing up there. You see that I just stopped.
UI Java-based tests. I estimate that the coverage to represent... I'd estimate the coverage...
Okay, and there's the beginning. So what we need to do is we need to cut out right here because that's right where I started to say I'd estimate. And then right over here, we'll cut that out. We'll click on this one here and we'll hit delete. And again, there's better techniques for editing, and Adam Wathan is actually showing me some of that stuff, and sometimes I use it and sometimes I just split and cut. But watch this now. We'll just go back and listen.
Looking for the test directory. While there were a few UI Java-based tests, I'd estimate the coverage to represent less than 20%.
And there you go. So there's lots of other little nitty-gritty editing tips that you could go into as far as Reaper or whatever editor you're using. But I think the idea of having these markers in here is really going to help me. In fact, later on as I was recording, do you see what I did here? I don't even remember what it was now because I recorded this like a week ago, but I think I was doing something where like a single marker meant one thing and 2 markers in quick succession meant another. I could see where you could pretty easily build a system for yourself that would make coming through this much quicker. Because typically I would say it takes 2 to 3 times the length of an audio file to do the editing. So if you have a 10-minute read, you're probably looking at 20 to 40 minutes of editing time to get that 10 minutes perfect. Hopefully this can cut that in half. That's it.